Hello, everybody. It's
Welcome.
our last live stream of 2025 here on the history of fresh produce.
Let's do it.
And actually, I guess right away we're going to say, as of now for 2026, we have no scheduled live streams. We're going to kind of transition into other things. Still same number of episodes and everything. So instead of having a live stream version of the episode, there won't be a live stream version. It's just
There'll still be a video version.
yes, we're trying to be better with full video access on our YouTube channel. We did put more videos this year than last year, but we're going to try to expand that further into 2026. But we'll see what we can do. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
It's a work in progress.
Always.
So yeah, so for this last live stream, we figured with it being kind of the end of the first half of the
The end.
2020s, the end of the first half, that we would do a little bit of like a reflection or
Okay.
a half a decade in review. And so we wanted to ask ourselves, well, what would history, if we have a historian like 100 years from now looking back at the 2020s up to this point, because we don't know what the next 5 years are going to bring. But up
No.
to this point, what
Okay.
would the 2020s be remembered for so far? And we know obviously fresh produce is not going to be a focal point for most historians in terms of overall history. But maybe there's a show like ours, Patrick, in 100 years from now doing the history of fresh produce. And then they're like, oh, this is what we're focusing on 100 years ago. So,
I don't know. It's crazy to think about, though, right? Like when we think about 100 years ago, right? Like it's 1925, right?
yeah,
And let's think
the
like
swinging 20s.
you got the Model T Ford that's mobbing around, right? You got I mean pretty much industrialization happening, right? I always go back to like, isn't it funny? You can go back to what's that show Yellowstone, right? Like the 1883, right? And then moving forward to the 1900s, like it's crazy to think about those little things, like not having a washer or dryer,
Yeah.
right? Like, and now in 100 years from now, they'll be saying, "Oh my gosh, they went through this crazy pandemic." When we think of like those pandemics back in the days, we think of like the locusts, right? The crazy mass, right? So you're right. It's like,
Oh, there was the
eh,
Dust Bowl, right? And I think was that in the 20s? Or somewhere around there. Yeah, it was about the
I mean,
20s.
there's a lot that
There's
it's happened. I think, like I said, this quarter of a decade, right? Or
yeah,
quarter of a century.
a lot's happened. And actually you mentioned COVID, and I think obviously that's I think we jotted down some ideas here of what we felt would be memorable things. And that was one of the top things I think that you and I both said.
Yeah,
I mean, COVID is definitely going to be up there with the
I
defining.
will never in my life look at toilet paper the same, right? As crazy as it sounds, and what that means is disruptions of the supply chains, right,
Yeah.
John? Because
Yeah.
that's what happened, and people are like, "Oh my gosh," like, you can't find the bare necessities of life, but we also learned about human beings too, right, during COVID and consumption and, um, personal endeavors, right? And it's just a lot. Like, it was very crazy, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think with the fresh produce lens and look at it from a historical impact wise. I mean, obviously the whole essential workers. I think the agriculture space and like you said, the supply chain got thrown into a spotlight that it might have not have had previously.
Yeah, I
People
agree.
needed to eat. People wanted to eat healthier because of the fear of illness and all these things. And I mean, we all remember those empty shelf things. I was just
I
looking.
remember.
I was looking on the computer here while we were talking. I see if I can share here for people. So there you go. Yeah. So those empty shells, right? I mean, that's, that, those were very common scenes back in COVID times, and I mean that was for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, COVID showed just how fragile the supply chain really is,
Yes.
and not only from the logistics standpoints, okay, with ships and trucks, and obviously there's people behind all of those, but an interesting piece behind that was also the immigrants and the workforce, because not only in the US, but if you look at the UK, a huge amount of their labor, just like in the US, is in the fresh produce sector is based on immigrant workforce. So temporary workers coming from overseas. And with COVID, all that stopped because they couldn't, you were not supposed to move around, you weren't supposed to travel, all these different things. And so Britain, I don't know if they did this in the US. I don't remember seeing anything like this, but in Britain, they did a Pick for Britain campaign. Did you hear about this when this went on?
No.
So apparently, there's this big movement to get people in Britain to help farmers pick produce. You even had the royal family come in and kind of promote this thing. You had King Charles, well, now King Charles, yeah, because I don't think he was king then. Uh, basically, telling people like it's our national duty to help support your farmers, and he got a lot of blowback for that because we're like, well, go pick it yourself. But but it wasn't a really overwhelming success. Only about 5 to 11% of Britons took up the 70,000 harvesting rolls that immigrants take.
Mm.
But again, it was a kind of an example of just again how fragile the supply chain is and
I
how
mean,
dependent we
yeah.
are on these.
And there was a lot that went with that, right? Like, you said essential workers, right, for the produce industry, but I mean, let's be real. I mean, did we get raises? Did we get more benefits? Did we get all of that? No.
No.
Like, I can tell you from COVID to now, like, if you were an RN, if you were an LPN, like, if you were some of those, like, nurses or even other government employees, you got raises, like, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. It's like but if you're a teacher, right? That was an essential worker,
Yep.
but teachers are still being my wife is being paid the same amount she was paid in 2019.
Mhm.
Like, teachers don't even get raises every year. They get like stipends or stimulus checks, right? That's what I call them. Like,
Yeah.
it's like $1,000 here or that. But it's crazy. They don't get raises. So, like, I don't understand how even in our industry too,
Yeah.
they don't give raises because they want you to sell more fruit or they want you to sell more or bring in more or do this. But then in all reality, the customers weren't ordering. The prices were different. That's not on us, right? We still got to do the jobs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's crazy because in some industries, COVID springboarded them and made different careers for them.
Yeah.
And it did for us, but it did for marketing, it did for different things. But are we getting is that person and there's some people that are still making the exact same amount they were making in 2019 before COVID, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we're the essential workers, we're the workforce. But yet, when domestic, programs come or imports come, they want to change the way they purchase, right? And that's even consumers. So, we are essential workers, right? And then we saw the immigration, the seasonal labor, right? That was unable to travel. So a lot of things weren't being picked. We even talked about this, because the H2A programs with Shea Myers, remember? Like, he
Mhm.
was having people come out and pick like asparagus, right? Well, guess what? That farm had to be sit for 3 years before he was allowed to make it back into a commercial because food safety,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't pick your fruit. You can't have pickers pick your fruit or your vegetables. And if you have someone else come do it, then we'll shut you down for 3 years. So there was just if someone's going to do a history podcast on produce, right, going back to 2020, these are the things that they're going to start looking at is that the essential workers, were we essential workers? What about the seasonal laborers and the unable to travel? What about how did that pick up the amount of cost that laid the burden on a grower, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, all of that, right? We saw port shutdowns, we saw backed up orders, we saw a lot. And I don't care what anybody says, John, say it how you want it. But COVID made people hefty, buddy. Like, people were not, I would say, slicing up fresh onions and guac like I was. Um, People were starting to get increased awareness of healthy eating because they realized they had been inside for way too long
Yeah.
and
It was more
weren't doing
static.
their
Yeah.
exercises, their planned health. Um, it springboards into today, right? Like, people like you and I, John, that are tall, slender people, they eat right? We get the bats of, wow, you're so skinny compared to the person that during COVID, right? They indulged a little bit more than they should have, right? So from increased awareness over the last 5 years, we're on this whole like Maha movement, make America healthy again because of what happened. Now, there was creative cooking, there was these things, but come on, man. How many people you came out of COVID and you were like, wow, you're a little bit of a different person than I
We
remember.
all aged during COVID.
Oh, hell,
We
dude,
all
heck yeah.
aged. And there was also a lot of banana bread. Remember all the sour bread and the banana bread and
Don't
all
get
that?
me
But
started. I
yeah,
had a lot of banana bread.
it's, but yeah, I mean, I think COVID is certainly gonna I mean, COVID's gonna be up there for a lot of industries, obviously, as a pivotal moment, and I think for, from a fresh produce standpoint, again, it really tested the limits of the supply chain, and we kept things moving in our industry, and uh, yeah. So I would definitely say that's up there in terms of if you're going to review the highlights of 2020s from a
Yeah,
historical
the 20 I
standpoint.
mean, I would, yeah, 100%. I mean, 100%.
And then the next one I had written down here was obviously the Russia Ukraine war. So obviously that's been going on for the last few years now, and it might not be something that everyone in the fresh produce industry or people thinking about fruits and vegetables think about as being
Okay.
dramatically linked to this conflict. But and we did an episode on this. I Was it this year? I think it was this year. Um, about the history between Russia and Ukraine and how produce was a kind of a piece of that history leading up to
Yeah.
this conflict. And so I guess if you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to that episode because it'll give a
Mhm.
lot more context. Um, but I think it is going to be one of those defining moments in 2020 as it relates to produce and agriculture as a whole. Because remember, Ukraine is considered the breadbasket of Europe. It's one of the top, definitely in the top 10 producers of wheat and grains in the world. And when that country came under attack, obviously that completely disrupted not only trade and exports and all these things, but
Mhm.
the global access to foods dependent on that. And, Africa, for example, is highly dependent on grain imports from out of that region. And what you saw was Russia. Again, Russia is also a very big player in the wheat and grain market. I think they're number 3 actually in the world. So for them, this and again, we talked about this in our episode, that added another layer to this conflict. If you're looking at it from an ag standpoint, they can control now even bigger percentage of that market and have more leverage in a geopolitical sense with other countries. Say, well, if you're not going to support our initiatives in this space, well, we're just not going to sell you grains anymore. And for a lot of countries, like in certain African countries, that was a tipping point of whether that's why you had. I think you remember early on in the conflict, certain countries were not necessarily arguing against Russia's aggression because again, there were certain things that they were relying on the Russians. You had the Russians that would go
Yep.
in and they would steal actual wheat. Like I think I have another video or a picture here. They were literally these army tanks in wheat fields. You can see it here if you're watching live. I mean, you had Russian armies going into wheat fields and seizing these fields and all the milled
Mhm.
grain and bringing it back to Russia or shipping it out of Ukraine and reselling it as Russian now crops. And then not only that, they were actually stealing equipment, farming equipment too. I mean, I don't know how many people are involved in farm operation. I personally am not, but I'm aware enough that farm equipment is not cheap. I mean, that is
No.
serious assets. And so they were also stealing a lot of that as well. And then if you look at the fertilizer impact, again, Ukraine, a huge fertilizer producer. So that, and we've seen that ripple into the US and other parts of the world and Europe, that drove up fertilizing prices. And if you want to focus really on Europe, because they're obviously the most at arm's length at this whole conflict, a
Mhm.
lot of their energy costs actually went up as well. And now, why is that important? Well, so energy went up for a few reasons. Obviously, Ukraine can produce some of that energy, but also the trade with Russia for their fuel to power, like the energy costs, they kind of cut that off to a degree, and that's important because a lot of Europe has greenhouses. So remember, the Netherlands, for
Ah, you're
example, is
right.
one of the biggest greenhouse product producing. A lot of the peppers we get in the U.S. and all these vegetables come from the Netherlands. You wouldn't think it, but they're all grown in these greenhouses. And so what ends up happening, the cost went up so high that growing things like tomatoes and other vegetables got so expensive that many growers actually cut back.
Isn't that
So a lot of
crazy?
these tomatoes in certain markets within Europe were they were either completely through the roof expensive or they just weren't offering them because the grower knew they couldn't make the money back. So
Wow.
it's just you again, you don't necessarily think about um these conflicts like, a war between Russia and Ukraine having impact on fresh produce, but there are
True.
these different layers, especially again with the unique position of Ukraine being the breadbasket of Europe and all the grains and the fertilizer production that's going on there. And so I think, from a fresh produce standpoint, that's going to be, I think, somewhat of a moment that's defining this decade in terms of the impact that it.
I agree, and we met a lot of Ukrainians as well. I mean, I've met so many that have migrated here to America since a lot of this has happened, right? So,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. So we're seeing a lot, and we're learning about new people and new cultures and things like that too, right? So, um, interesting, right? I mean, they're the 20s, right? The 20s. Oh my gosh, when you think of the 20s, it was like a whole different 20s, right?
Yeah,
Well, it wasn't like how
it's
we
been a
think
long
about it.
5 years. I feel like I feel like it's been more like a
I'm
decade.
tired,
I'm telling you. Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, think about it, and then, like, talking about being tired, let's talk about technology, like,
Well, that's a big one, right? I mean, we've.
that's the hardest one because I feel like, I feel like right now I told my wife we were driving home the other day, and I go, I think everybody just feels this way. I go, but like we're all in like this zombie mode right now that you can't get away from technology. Like you can't be in your house without technology being on. You can't like even if you put it down, someone's gonna call you, someone's gonna text you, right? And
Mhm.
if you leave your phone, like I do this every once in a while over the weekends, right? Or certain things. Like I leave my phone, I'll come back at like 28 text messages, 13 missed calls, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? But it's like sometimes the same person. Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
let me know what's going on later today. Hey, call me. And you're just like, the heck? But it's the same thing. So there's like this, and then the rise. I'm telling you that because then you got the rise of AI. You never know what's even happening anymore. You don't even know if something's even real anymore when you see these videos, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
when we talk about going into produce, but like robots capable of picking at prime
yeah.
harvest time, right?
Well, think about
Machine
that. I mean,
learning
the amount of
models.
robotics
Like,
we've seen.
geez,
I
it's
mean,
crazy.
it's, I mean, again, I'm not as familiar with all the details. I mean, yeah, you can
Yeah.
see here when I've I mean, you have these robots now in certain fields that are checking for, like, sizing and blemishes and
Yep.
God knows what else. Um, but I think it's still early days, but I think this is really the decade where it's really broken out and has scaled to a level where you do start to see farmers, um, putting this technology into use on the field. And the question is this going to be something that really sticks? Is this going to be as pivotal of a moment as the other agricultural revolutions that we've seen in history? We talk about, of course, always the first agricultural revolution when humans finally decide to start cultivating. But then
Mhm.
you had a few other cultural revolutions. Obviously, during the Industrial Revolution era, there was a lot of and advancements at that point that really also kicked it forward. Then you had the Green Revolution, which was all about um, these hybrid varieties, right?
Mhm.
That were
Yeah.
taking less water and all these different things. I mean, this could be potentially a decade that gets marked as the next agricultural revolution by
100%.
the leverage, of AI vis-a-vis these robots and all these put like the physical robots aside, like we just saw in that video. But you have machine learning,
No.
right? Like in industries that are not on the field, the computers are able now to predict things through
Yep.
more in-depth analysis, whether it's you know weather patterns or soil nutrients or things like this. Um, yeah, this I mean, again, we can't predict the future,
Mhm.
but there's certainly the ingredients there that this could be a defining moment for another step up in terms of a revolution in the agriculture space.
I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, there's just so much going on, and I think we're gonna keep increasing production, increasing right? A lot of different things, right? Vertical farming is just going through the roof.
What's
CEA
another
is
one, isn't
going
it?
through the
I
roof,
mean
right? Like, it's crazy.
vertical farming's obviously been around for a while
A
now,
100%.
but I think now these last few years, beginning with the 2020s is really where it's scaled up more and has become I mean, there's still a lot of debates of whether it's a viable, sustainable business. I mean, there's obviously business that can make money off of it, but there was
Yeah.
also a lot that were not successful. But I think vertical farming definitely has come to age during this decade, or at least is starting to come
Yes.
of age in this decade.
100%.
Um, I think we're still learning. I think we're still learning in that space what is the best way to implement vertical farming because it's obviously
Mhm.
not a good fit for every place and every sector, and there's a lot of variables. But
100%.
um, I mean, the Netherlands has been doing it for years, and they're one of the biggest producers of vertical farming products. So it obviously works in certain places, but there's also been a lot of failures we've seen in the space of vertical farming. But yeah, I think 2020s could be remembered, up to this point
Up to
as
this point.
as a decade where vertical farming came more into maturity.
Yeah,
We'll
a
see.
and again, we're all there's a lot more, right? There's a lot more going. I mean, AI is helping with vertical farming now, right?
Mhm.
You've
Yeah,
got
exactly. Yeah.
you've got genetic engineering now, right?
Well, that's another one, right?
CRISPR is one of the things that has arrived with far less public backlash. CRISPR is being used in a lot of different things, right? The purple
Yes.
tomato is one of them. I mean,
Well,
there's
that's what I was gonna say, the purple tomato.
what about Arctic apples? You know, they're working with, CRISPR as well, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, it's crazy. Yeah, look at those purple tomatoes. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I guess this is more of a personal, personal opinion slash feeling. I'm he I'm hesitant with, that level of technology, and people that hear me via different channels and
Hear me,
things,
hear me.
will not be surprised to hear me say these things because again, we've talked about this on our show as it relates to history and how crops have evolved over the millennia, right? I mean,
Yeah.
ever since life began, life has been evolving, right? And then once
Mhm.
humans decided that they were going to start picking and choosing what they were going to eat, they were essentially assisting these plants evolve as well. They were deciding, oh, this trait gets to live on, this one doesn't, either by collecting the seeds or grafting. They were deciding basically who lives and who dies in the plant world.
Mm.
And
That's
that
wild.
works. That works for millennia because it's such a complex network, the connections between all these living things, everything operates in balance, like the yin and the yang and
Okay.
whatever comparison you want to use, but everything's in balance. That's the natural force of the world, right? Everything needs to be balanced. The the fear that I have with that level of technology, and every technology has a level of, I guess, fear with it, right? There's the
True.
goods and the bads.
True.
What I have a fear about with this one is you start to adjust genetics in a pace that is so much faster because you're essentially just going in and saying, okay, now it's going to be purple, or now it's going to have this trait or whatever it is. And nature now is completely out of whack, right? You're completely running out of balance. And what's that impact going to be on a global scale, on a natural, planetary level? I don't know. I think that's a little scary because you are intentionally throwing the systems out of
We don't know
homeostasis.
yet.
And I think the reason why, and you kind of touched on this, there's far less public backlash with this CRISPR. The funny thing is CRISPR is it's not really all
Yeah.
that different than GMO, which is, you know, had a horrible backlash against it. But it's really this almost exactly the same thing. Um, from what I understand, if I am saying that wrong, please correct me.
We will.
Um, but I think I think they've done a better job marketing this technology now through the renaming it to a degree. I think the science is better understood, so people kind of understand that it's not, a
Mm.
CRISPR or GMO product is not inherently unhealthy. It's
Yeah.
not going to hurt you. Uh, it's the point that I just brought up. It might hurt the overall balance of the natural world. Um, And I think on top of all that, I think there's also a paranoia or a fear about where we are as a planet in terms of
Yeah, I agree with
climatic
that.
change and all these things. And so people are kind of recognize, oh man, we need to have more resilient crops. And now that we have this technology that allows us to do it, but again, there's there are unknowns that come with this as well. So again, that this could kind of tying in with all the technology things that we just talked about here between the AI and the vertical farming.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a watershed moment looking back 100 years from now saying, this was the next level in terms of a agricultural revolution in
Yep.
terms of what direction we headed. Now,
Yeah,
whether or not we take the
which
right road
where
or
will
not,
it go? Yeah, exactly.
is this gonna be the right road? I don't know. That's not our job,
We're not sure
studying
yet.
history, we're not predictors of these things, but, I think it's definitely gonna be one of those key crossroads that we're facing, when we look back in history, so, yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I think so. I think it's gonna be one for the record books. I mean, right, to say it. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, like I said, that was just crazy. And then I think one of the other things that's going to be talked about is the politics as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just to sum up a couple of the last ones, it's politics and climate, right? Um, and they kind of go kind of in hand to hand together too, because climate has to do with producing, in farming, right? And then politically with tariffs, with trade wars. I mean, from 2020, it didn't matter who was president in the United States, right?
Mhm.
There was obviously trade wars going on between 2020 and 2025, halfway through. We
Yep.
still have, again, 3 more years of the Republican president, right? Um, we've just again, it's just all of it was up in the air. Immigration was attacked, right, by U.S. and labor challenges. The U.S. the immigration debate became like really inseparable from the food supply chain because, even comedians at some points were like, I heard this one comedian, and I wish I knew the guy's name, but he was like, people don't understand that he's like the Mexicans pick our fruit
Yeah.
and I was in the store the other day and the lady looks at me and she goes, "Oh man, we got to ship all these Mexicans back to Mexico." And he looks at the lady and he goes, "Ma'am, who do you think picks your fruit?" And she goes, "Sweetheart, I shop at Whole Foods. Mexicans don't pick my fruit."
Well, yeah, I mean,
But it's
that's the
funny, right?
problem,
And
right?
it's like
It's
we
the aware I
we
mean, we did a whole episode on this as well earlier this year about, when the Secretary of Ag made this announcement about
yeah.
wanting a 100% American workforce and all these very elaborate, nice or well, it depends on if you think it's nice sounding or not, but we kind of broke that down, the history of it, and to your point, I mean, America has never had a 100% American workforce. It's always been immigrant-based, and it's either been
Yeah,
through
of
forced
course.
or, through voluntary immigrant, workforce. So, um, but, to your point, I mean, trade wars have always been around. That in of itself, it's not very new. I think what will be remembered and honestly, if you look 100 years ago to the 1920s, you did have a similar, very right-wing movements that swept across Europe at the time. I mean, we did an episode all these episodes are coming to mind now. We did about the organics, remember the
It's
organics and
all coming
fascism?
back to us
So,
now.
the fascist movement, and that gave birth to the organics. So in of itself, these things aren't unprecedented. When it comes to tariffs, yeah, I mean, I think the jury's still out on that one. Is it gonna be
Yeah.
something that completely transforms and is a watershed moment for produce, and global trade around produce?
Mhm.
Don't know yet. Could it be? Yes. Could it not be? Yes. But there's the possibility that this decade ends up being remembered as a restructuring of the trade system, a global trade system of
Oh, yeah.
produce.
100%.
So there's obviously a possibility, but I think the bigger piece is still coming back against that immigration thing. I mean, we saw, at the first half of this year, just, I mean, produce was front and center on the news channels. You saw these raids happening on farms, on produce farms.
Oh, yeah.
You and I heard it within our industry. People we know, their farms getting raided by ICE. But again, the irony of it all is that American farms have always relied on these immigrants to
Yeah.
pick. And anytime America has tried to get its local um, um, citizen base to do that work, they said, "No, I'm not doing that." Or they tried and they said, "What
I
was I
said, "No,
thinking?"
thank you."
And they get back out. So, um, yeah, I mean, I don't if I had to guess, I don't think it's gonna be, you know, a super big highlight of this decade or overly memorable.
Right?
Um, but I think in recent memory, it's obviously gonna stand out, to a degree. Um, but then, of course, you were talking about climate as well. Yeah, I mean, I think that grows every year in terms of relevance and importance, right?
Agreed.
Um, and I think 2020s, I think it's similar with the political thing. It's so hard to say if the 2020s is going to be remembered for its politics or even its climate, because I think every decade and every year the climate becomes more relevant because
Yes.
of just the extremes that we continue to see. I mean, I know you see it in Florida, obviously, with more intense storms and things like this, and really every part of the country sees that.
I mean, yeah, truthfully.
And obviously, that has a huge impact on produce. I mean, I know from an import standpoint that the weather is becoming such a factor that it's becoming difficult to plan. I mean, produce is always hard to plan for, but you throw in the complexity
All these
now.
wrenches.
Yeah, all these ranges of unpredictability in weather, the largest rainfall you've ever had in like 100 years or more, the coldest temperatures or the hottest temperatures, and it becomes really difficult
Yeah, it does.
to plan and to build programs and do all these different things, and then trying to explain that to retailers and consumers who just expect, a banana or a grape or a tomato to be on the shelf in perfect condition, you know, 12 months of the year. It's a tough thing. And then what are people doing about? Well, it's kind of everything we talk about between the tech, um, political movements to try to address some of these challenges. I mean, regenerative farming. I think that I have a difficult relationship with regenerative farming
Yeah.
because I think this decade, and this is very niche. I think people within produce will recognize maybe this decade as the decade where regenerative farming came into the spotlight. However, regenerative farming, if you look at history again, that's been our way of farming for millennia. That's not, we're literally just going back to the way we should be farming, which is regenerative farming. It was only, and I think we're going to do an episode actually this coming year about the Green Revolution and all that, because it's really during the Industrial Revolution where
Yeah.
the farming changed to what we know today, which I like to call it as industrial or commercial farming. This farming is not the standard kind of farming that our ancestors have been doing for millennia. What they've been doing for millennia was farming to make sure that the soil stayed healthy and the land around it stayed healthy, so they could be able to grow the next season and the season after that. And then,
Yes.
it was more long term thinking. Right now, the way we farm, generally
Mm.
speaking, of course, it's not everybody, but the majority is all about okay, how much yield can we squeeze out of this land this year?
Today.
Yeah, today, forget next year. We'll just worry about getting more fertilizers and
Today.
chemicals. So so I had
We'll see it today. Like,
yeah, it's all about quarters, right? You got to hit your quarter marks. And so I think regenerative farming, I think the intention is correct, but I don't see it working on a global scale, on a global level, unless we're willing to tear down our current food supply chain system,
yeah.
because that model doesn't work in the model that we operate in today. It
No,
just
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
Because with regenerative farming, just as a simple example, you're supposed to leave, again, we've seen this in history too. If people grow crops, they leave the field flat fallow for a year or two so it regenerates, right?
Yep.
But in our our global food supply chain system today, farmers cannot afford to let a field sit fallow because the demands are so high that if they do that, they can go out of business because they're not producing, what the market is demanding in our current model. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but unless we're willing to kind of reimagine the whole entire thing, I think regenerative farming will. So I think it can go two roads, right? In terms of
Okay.
how it can be remembered. Either it's going to be remembered as kind of a little blip where people are like, oh, this is like a fad kind of thing, and nothing actually happens, or which I think is less likely to happen, is globally people are like, okay, well, yeah, we should do this, and we're willing to kind of tear down a lot of the structure of our current system and rebuild it with the center focus being around regenerative farming. So we'll see. I'm not optimistic. I want to be optimistic about it. Very
You're like, "I'm not
optimistic.
optimistic, but I wanna be optimistic."
Yeah, yeah. And then I would say on the climate standpoint, I mean, yeah, then you have the whole packaging and plastics and waste, and again, it's kind of hand in hand with what we were just saying. This stuff has been increasing in visibility and conversation for the last several years now. Um, Whether or not 2020 is the decade is going to be remembered as a pivotal period to address these things.
True.
Again, I think the jury's out. I mean, you have a lot of laws that are coming out now around, EPR laws, which are basically extended producer responsibility laws
Yeah.
around, you know, basically taxes on packaging. Is that going to address plastics and waste and all these things? Hard to say again. It could be, again, one of these things that kind of is a short-lived movement and then it blows up and nobody remembers it,
Yeah, right? That's also true.
or it becomes a defining bedrock rule that kind of reshapes how we, handle packaging and waste. Um, so yeah, I think those are kind of the highlights that we can kind of see so far, uh, for the produce world as it relates to the 2020s thus far. We have still halfway of the decade to go, so a lot could change. Um, but yeah, that's
That's, the story, and we're sticking to it, huh?
yeah. So as far as the history of fresh produce is concerned, though, um, we can at least predict the future as for our show. We will be around again next year. We have some some ambitions that we have that we'd like to make happen. I mean, we already have we've already been recording the first multi-part series that we're going to launch on the first, well, not the 1st of January, because we re-release on Tuesday. So the first Tuesday of January, that will kick off. So we'll have that for all of you to enjoy. And we have some projects we're going to try to do this World Cup series. We'll see how disciplined we can be in
We can do it.
making that happen. It's a lot of episodes, but we're going to try to do that one.
And if you're going to a World Cup game, we'll have you on for a quick interview. Okay? Like,
That's right.
we can have some fun together. Okay?
That's right. Yeah, I'm not going to be going to. I am not that wealthy to afford these tickets.
Well, there's a few of us, Jehoon's group, Ross, me, we all put in tickets for like the free tickets. And I think
that's right. Yeah, there's the
yeah, so that was like a year or two ago. So Jehoon's got rights for like 2 tickets in LA, and then Ross and I have like 4 tickets or something like that in Atlanta. So there's an opportunity that if we get picked, we're gonna go.
oh, well, then you're going to have to be the one that's going to have to report from the World Cup.
I'll do it, man.
But yeah, I mean, we have some interesting topics that we're going to talk about. So again, our first series is going to be on Joseph Banks, one of these botanical explorers and adventurers. We've had a few of them on the show already, but he's quite a character, and as you'll soon find out when you listen to this series, I mean, this should really be a movie. I'm just saying, if you're a movie director or producer and you're
Call
listening to our
us.
show, we're happy to, share our knowledge on the topic and make that happen, because I think it'd be a great movie. But yeah, other topics we're talking about here. I mean, I'm looking at our list here. We're talking about the Dust Bowl. I think we're going to try to do a series / episode.
That'll
Not
be
sure how
fun.
long. I already said the Green Revolution. We're going to obviously do history of different products. So on our short list so far, we have watermelons and dates, pomegranates, peanuts, garlic, coffee.
We got a lot.
Coffee will be. I mean, it's not like, okay, the drink coffee is not a prototype, but it comes from produce. So, the
It does.
coffee bean and all that. So I think that'll be fun. Mushrooms. Mushrooms will
That'll
be
be a good
fun.
one.
We talked very little bit about mushrooms.
Yeah, we need to do a
Uh,
history of fresh produce
we
on
do that.
mushrooms for sure. That's a the fun guy is a good one. We gotta get more on that.
Super fun. And this one's interesting. So this was actually a listener suggestion. Have you heard? Because you're in Florida.
About the Muffin Man? Oh.
No, not the Muffin Man. I don't think that the Muffin
The
Man's
Muffin
Floridian.
Man?
But do you know about Edgar J. Watson?
No.
No. So apparently he was some guy that lived in Florida. I think it was the 1800s or something. But I think he killed a lot of people. But he had a farm and thing. So it's like a murder mystery. We're gonna be like true crime episode for that one on the
Oh,
history of
I
fresh
like it
produce.
already.
So, but you're ready to go, huh?
Yeah, I like it already. I'm like, "All right, let's
True
do that.
crime.
All
Everybody
right,
loves true crime.
let's do this."
That's a hot spot. What else we have? I see we have the wild fig operation, so we teased that during our fig
That's gonna be
episode.
cool.
Mexico cartels.
Yep. We gotta bring the mafia back
We're
sooner
gonna
or
bring
later too.
Yeah, the mafia might sneak in at some point.
No, wait, no. Listen, it's gonna sneak in. We know it's going to.
Ma Mafia always finds its way into our stuff, and I think honestly, I think we're gonna try to it was a very long time ago. I think it was our first year that we did the history of bananas, and I
Yeah.
think at least the intention is to do a more in-depth look at some of the stories within those stories. So looking specifically at, um, the certain s- periods within the history of the bananas, like some of the Guatemala incidents, and um, I don't know. There are different stories that we might just do a deeper dive in. So
We should.
there's there's
I'm
a
totally down.
there's a lot to look forward to on the history of fresh fries. If anyone thought that we were running out of ideas, there's just, if anything, there's just still too many.
There's too many,
There's
yeah,
still too
there's
many
so much
things.
more, yeah, so much more.
So, lots to look forward to. And of course, if you are not a member of the History of Fresh Produce yet, now is your time. It is, well, when this episode drops, as a podcast, it's going to be the 23rd. So,
Mhm.
look, still 2 days till Christmas, and you can order this and have it right away. So, if you have a produce lover in your life, or a history lover, or a produce history lover in your life, this is the gift that will just keep on
The gift
giving.
that keeps on
It
giving.
just keeps on giving. You get discounts on books, bonus episodes, free, or not free, but early access to episodes. Um, I know I'm forgetting other
And
features too.
I've got some books, so if you want a book, I've got 3 books to give away.
Oh, yes, that's that too. Yeah.
So if you want, I've got a Titanic book, cookbook, I have a Harry Potter cookbook, and I've got the Food Explorer. So if you're watching the live stream, put some comments in. We'll randomly pick somebody, and you'll get a book for Christmas.
Oh, look at that. Such a giving spirit for the holidays.
It's the holiday season.
So everyone, but with this being our last live stream for 2025, we want to thank everybody for listening week in, week out with us, for supporting the show. I'd be lying if we said we wouldn't be doing it without you. I mean, we'd still be doing it. We'd be doing it, to listen to ourselves. But it makes it a lot more enjoyable being able to know that a whole bunch of you out there are listening as well, enjoying it, talking to us, sending us messages. Keep sending us messages. We love to hear, if you liked something, if you didn't like something, if there was something we didn't say that's interesting. We like it all. And we learned there's a lot of you all around the world. It's not just, I mean, we get the statistics, and I forget how many countries we were in this year. It's quite a
A
lot,
lot.
though. It was quite a lot. So again, we thank you for the support, and we wish everybody a very happy new year. And I'm not going to say we'll see you next year, because there is one more episode that's going to drop before the end of the year.
We won't see you next year.
So
We'll see you
next
soon.
week's episode is the Swiss Perry tree murderer, or the Swiss Perry murderer,
Jeez.
something like that. Yeah, we're ending 2025.
We're ending on a good
on
note,
on
everyone.
uplifting story, but yeah. So thank you again so much. Have a very happy new year, and until
Very,
next
very.
time, it's goodbye for me, John Papp.
And goodbye for me, Patrick Kelly.